That reading is from part of the Passion, which we will read on Palm Sunday, or the kids are actually going to work to help read that with me on Sundays when we're with the kids. And we've all heard the story about Peter's denial of Jesus. It's in all four Gospels, and it's in all four Gospels. It must be important, right? That's why it's there. I got thinking a little bit about what it's like to stand up for what you believe in, and to stand up against possible death. I've been reading a book on the history of Jerusalem, and there was a person in the 17th century, a Jewish man, I think he was from Europe somewhere, who came to the belief that he was the Messiah. He said, "I'm the Messiah. I have finally come." And went around and got all sorts of converts. And he said, in 1666, the world is going to come to an end. I'm going to reign on my throne in Jerusalem, and this is going to be it. Hundreds of thousands of people were following this guy. And the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire obviously heard about this and was not happy with it. So he had the man brought in, and he told him, "I'm giving you a choice. You can face 100 of my archers, or you can convert to Islam." There's a group in Turkey today of about 100,000 people called the converts, who are followers of him, because on that day he converted rather than face the arrows. Standing up for what you believe in is always easy when you're not facing the crisis, right? It's always easy when there's no threat. It's easy to stand up in Augusta, New York and say, "I'm a Christian," right? It ain't so easy in other places. Reading a story tonight in the Voice of the Martyrs, which is a magazine which comes out every month. And the Voice of the Martyrs documents the persecuted church around the world. A story about a boy named Hussein living in Turkey. And Hussein's family was Muslim, and they converted to becoming Christians. And the family said, "Well, don't tell anybody we've converted to becoming Christians." Turkey's a 96% Muslim country. But Hussein, little boy, went to school wearing his cross. And the kids saw that, they taunted him, and he said, "If you do that, I'm going to tell the teacher." Well, they continued to beat him up. So the father went and talked to the boy that beat him up. And the father of the boy that beat him up said, "Well, you should have been beat up. What are you doing, teaching your son that kind of stuff?" The little boy still wanted to keep wearing his cross to school. And they got into school, and he had to recite Islamic prayers. And the kid wouldn't do it. So the teacher beat him. And the father went and talked to the school and said, "What are you doing to this?" And he said, "What are you, Christians?" And the father admitted, "Yes, we are." He said, "Well, the kid probably deserves it." So they moved to another school. That's real life people standing up for what they believe in, standing up to the problems which we face in the world with people who don't believe with what we believe, who won't stand up when we stand up for Christ. Sometimes it's more difficult than it is here in this place. But the story tonight from Peter isn't just about standing up for what you believe and about denying Jesus. There's something sort of more going on in that story, because there are people who stand up for their faith who aren't just Christians all over the world. That story I've been reading about the history of Jerusalem talks about a lot of Jewish people who were put to death because they refused to renounce their faith. A lot of Muslim people at the hands of Christians who refused to convert were put to death. A lot of Christian people who refused to convert were put to death. All sorts of people, you know. People are willing to stand up and die. We have people that are willing to go to battle for us, our soldiers that go overseas and fight, you know, from all walks of life, willing to die for something important. Sometimes the people we despise the most in the world, we have terrorists, people willing to die for their cause, right? Those are the worst things. So it's not just simply that you're dying for something. It's not just simply that you're willing to give up your life for anything. And it's not just that Jesus went to the cross to die for, you know, because he was right, or for his faith. If you think that's all that Jesus went to the cross for, then you've missed part of the point. If you think that's all you're supposed to stand up for, just standing up for being a Christian, there's more to it. Now, Peter, throughout the Gospels, or if you remember, Peter is someone who does stand up for Jesus, right? He is someone who's very active in standing up for Jesus. But he does it sort of in the wrong way. So when Jesus says, I'm going to have to go to Jerusalem and die, what does Peter say? Lord forbid it, right? Lord forbid it. We're not going to let that happen. I'm going to stand up for you. I'm going to stand up for you. Get behind me, Satan, says Jesus, right? That's not what it's all about. When they're in the garden and the troops come to arrest Jesus, who pulls out his sword? It's Peter. Peter takes out his sword and strikes the ear of one of the high priest's servants, one of the people coming to arrest him. Jesus says, put away your sword. That's not what it's about. Peter often says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stand up. Jesus says, that may not quite necessarily be what we're talking about. And so when Peter tells Jesus, although everyone is going to leave you, I will never forsake you. Remember Peter says that? Jesus says it's like a shepherd and all the sheep are going to scatter. You know, oh no, that's not going to be me. I won't do that. What happens with Peter? Peter is off following Jesus, and he says, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to forsake him. And what is he doing? Is he really truly following what Jesus wants? Is he really truly doing, is he listening to what Jesus says? Because Jesus says to Peter, no, before the cock crows twice, you're going to deny me 3 times. But Peter won't listen to that. He won't listen to what God says. He says, I'm going to do this on my own strength. And Peter, when there's no one else following Jesus, Peter follows Jesus to the high priest's house. In the story of John, it's Peter and one other disciple go in, and they go into the courtyard, and they are waiting, waiting around to see what's going to happen. Where are the other disciples? They weren't there. Where were all the other people that were out there on Palm Sunday? Were they there to protect Jesus? No. Peter's there. Peter wants to do something. He wants to be there. And yet, although he has come that close, right? Even though he has walked that close with Jesus, he doesn't quite get it. Jesus isn't asking him to come there to swoop in and do a last-minute rescue of him. He's not saying, what's Peter doing there? Why is he there? Peter is acting on his own strength. He's acting on his own beliefs. And although he thinks his heart's in the right place, he just doesn't get it. You got to listen to Jesus. You got to listen to what God is telling you. And although Peter has stood up for Jesus all along, he doesn't quite understand that really God's the one that's in control. God has a plan. He has it all worked out. Peter, I know what's going to happen. I know you're going to deny me. You think you have strength? You think you're going to stand up? You're not. I know. I'm God, right? Jesus knows that. And so Peter is there. He is at the high priest's courtyard. He's warming himself by the fire, and someone says, "Aren't you one of the followers?" "No, I'm not." Now, why does he say that? Well, he doesn't want to be arrested, right? He doesn't want to have something bad happen to him. Would it help Jesus at all if he said, "Yes, that's who yes, I am"? No, he's going to play it smart. He's thinking, right? He's using his own strength. He's using his own head, or so he thinks. You know, in John it talks about it's the high priest, one of the other, the brother of the guy whose ear he's lopped off earlier in the story, says, "Didn't I see you in the garden?" Oh no, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. Well, there's someone who saw him there. Peter thinks he's being smart, thinks he's being clever. Finally, someone says to him, "Of course you're with him. You're a Galilean. We can hear your accent, right?" It'd be like someone from if they're following somebody from Scotland around central New York, he had that big Scottish brogue. Oh, I can't do a Scottish brogue, but it was obvious. It was obvious who he was. Everybody could see who he was. But Peter thinks he can outsmart everybody. He's relying on what he thinks is his own strength. What happens? He denies him. The cock crows. He's found out. And it's not just that he denied him. The problem was that he was relying on his own strength. He thought he could do it all himself. We sometimes think that we can stand up to anything, right? We say, "I would never forsake him. I would never do that. I'm stronger than that." Well, you know what? You're relying on your own strength. If you think you're going to stand up for Jesus and do it on your own strength, you're going to be like Peter and be disappointed. You're going to be found out. You're not going to be able to do it. But if you rely on God's strength, you will be able to stand up. Just like that little boy in Turkey, right? Just like so many other people who stand up, it's because they rely upon the strength of God, not saying, "Oh, I can do it." Because if you start relying on your own strength, you will fail. You have to rely on God's strength. The interesting thing is that the strength of God comes out most in the weakness which we find. When we find ourselves to be weak, that's when we can find that strength. When we humble ourselves and admit that we can't do it on our own, that's when we find the strength. It's not about pulling out the sword and saying, "I'll free you, Jesus." It's not about saying, "We'll raise a crowd and we'll come in there and rescue you." It's not about relying on yourself. Because then you have a person who you're following who you can rescue. Jesus needs our help, right? Does God need our help? No. God doesn't need our help, right? It's about we have to rely upon Him. Jesus went to the cross to die, not just for a cause, not just because he was standing up for something. He went to the cross to die for people's sins. He went to the cross to die for Peter. He went to the cross to die for you and me. He went to the cross to die for the high priest and for the bystanders and for the people who were accusing him. He went to the cross and emptied himself